Good afternoon, and welcome to Kidney Talks with the GW Ron and Joy Paul Kidney Center, MOTEP, the National Minority Organ Tissue and Transplant Education Program, and the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church. I am Jennifer Rigo, your host for this particular webinar. Reverend Curry with the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church may be joining us later, but I'm happy to fill in his stead. This is a very exciting edition of Kidney Talks, and it is the first webinar that we are streaming with blackdoctor.org. We could not be more happy to do this with them, and we look forward to our continued partnership. Today, our presentation will be on the 5 stages of renal disease given by Dr. Joseph Keith Melanson. Dr. Melanson is the chief of the GW Transplant Institute, medical director for the GW Ron and Joy Paul Kidney Center, and professor of surgery at the George Washington University Hospital. Dr. Melanson's specialties include kidney, liver, and pancreas transplantation and stem cell transplantation and laparoscopic kidney donation. Among his research interests are minimizing immunosuppression, transplant organ tolerance, racial differences and outcomes of organ transplantation, and stem cell transplantation. Dr. Melanson has presented numerous papers, presentations, and participated in several research activities and book chapters. He also participated in the largest ever paired kidney exchange in November of 2010 and currently holds the Guinness Book of World Records in that category. Without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Melanson to begin our presentation. I'm so happy to see my co-host, which I'm going to give my duties over to him, Reverend Kendrick Curry with the Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church. Welcome, sir. I'm going to give you some time to make any comments before we begin our presentation.
Just quickly, thank you so much, Jennifer, for filling in. And this is going to be an outstanding presentation. Dr. Melanson will have a presentation that's par excellence. And I'm just looking forward to the ongoing dialogue and all that we can do to help save our communities. And so we'll turn it over to Dr. Melanson to kick it off with an outstanding presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Curry, and thank you, Jennifer. And it is my pleasure to be here because this is important. You know, currently we have an epidemic of kidney disease in this country, and it's very important that we educate people about what causes kidney disease. And once the slides come up, I'll get into the meat of the presentation, but suffice it to say that some very, very common illnesses is what is causing this epidemic in this country, actually worldwide. But in the United States, we suffer from this more than any other industrialized country. So what should you know about your risk for kidney disease? There are 5 stages of kidney disease, and we will go through them. Next slide. Okay, so the most important thing to understand about the 5 stages of kidney disease is that the first 3 stages can be reversible. Let me repeat that. The first 3 stages can be reversible. So what that means is that it is of the utmost importance that if you have early kidney disease, that it is diagnosed so that the causes of that kidney disease can be addressed, because your kidney disease can actually get better. So you need to know the stages, and you need to get diagnosed, and you need to get treated as soon as possible. Next slide. Okay, so if you look this up on the internet, you're gonna see this thing GFR, and let me tell you what GFR means. It means glomerular filtration rate, and all that really is talking about is when the blood comes through your kidney, there are these little engines all throughout the kidney, and those little engines are actually what does the work of filtrating the junk out of your blood. And what's the junk? The junk is the stuff we eat every day, as well as all of the breakdown products of our body. So GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate, and you want it to be higher. The higher, the better, usually. So if you're in stage 1 for kidney disease, your GFR is actually normal, but you still have kidney disease because it's not going to be diagnosed by looking at your GFR. It's going to be diagnosed a different way. We'll get into that. Stage 2, your GFR is still relatively within the normal range, which is why it's so hard to diagnose someone when they're in the first 2 stages. Okay? It's usually not until you are in stage 3, unless a doctor has been following you very closely and focusing on your kidney disease or your kidney function, would you even know you're in stage 1 or stage 2. But it's usually in stage 3 when your GFR, in other words, your blood work starts to look abnormal. You're in stage 3. Stage 4, you already have chronic disease. You're really at the point of no return, because although you may not need dialysis when you're in stage 4, it's very unlikely that your kidney disease can turn around and you could get better once you're at stage 4. And then people that are at stage 5, they are usually going to have to be on dialysis at that point. So those are the 5 stages. And like I said, the most important thing for anyone that has kidney disease is to get diagnosed in those first 3 stages. Next slide. All right, so stage 1. And, I'm a transplant surgeon, but I've come to the conclusion that diagnosing people early is what is most important in my field. So I founded this institute when I was here at George Washington. And in that institute, the Ron and Joy Paul Kidney Center, what we do primarily is go out into the community to screen people for kidney disease. So let's start with what leads to kidney disease. Well, what leads to kidney disease are problems like diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity. Those are the 3 top reasons why people have kidney disease. Usually it's a combination thereof. Okay, so that's what leads to kidney disease. When you're at stage 1, when the doctor looks at your blood work still looks okay. But it's in your that there's a problem. And what's the problem? The problem is you're spilling protein in your urine. So you may go for a routine checkup and the doctor may tell you, oh, you have some protein in your urine. This is important. This is the first stage of kidney disease. Having excess protein in your urine is an issue. It's not necessarily a disease, but it's an issue. In other words, are there normal reasons why you could have a lot of protein in your urine? Yes, absolutely. You could be eating a very, very high protein diet. You could have participated in very rigorous sporting activities. All these things could make the protein in your urine increase, but it should not be ignored, because protein in the urine is the first stage of kidney disease. And the way you could know, even without the test, if you have a lot of protein in your urine, if all of a sudden when you get up in the morning, you notice that your urine is a lot more foamy than it used to be, lots of bubbles, lots of suds, that's a lot of protein, and that needs to be investigated. That's the first thing that goes awry in kidney disease. Next slide. Okay, so stage 2. Again, this stage is also oftentimes missed by routine tests. Doctors often will miss that someone is in stage 2. What's happening in stage 2? Well, it's the same thing we talked about in stage 1, except that it's just to a greater degree. And so this is why I tell my patients all the time, it's it's important for you to go to the doctor for your yearly checkup. But it's not just important to go for the checkup and look at that snapshot in time. What needs to occur is all of your tests from the previous year or 6 months or so need to be compared to your new test. It's only in the comparison sometimes that you can start to see a trend, and it's in the trend that the story is told. In other words, remember we talked about GFR. GFR is how well your kidney is working by the blood test. Well, you could have there's a range of GFR, right? They could tell you your serum creatinine is normal, which is good. And then the next year they could tell you your serum creatinine is normal. That's good. But if in that 1 year that elapsed, your serum creatinine went from 0.6 to 0.9, that's a big jump. And that someone needs to be alerted to that fact and do some additional tests. Same thing with the protein, because again, protein in the urine is not normal, or at least shouldn't be assumed to be normal. It can be normal, but it shouldn't be assumed to be normal. It has to be proven to be normal. And you might ask, well, you said it could be normal. How do you prove it is normal? Well, there's some more specific tests that the doctor could do, or you could just do a simple thing. You could just say, well, drink a lot of water, don't eat a lot of protein for the next 2 days, no vigorous exercise, and then come back and we will retest you. So that's the easiest way to do it. And if on the retest it comes down to normal, well, then that was just a variant. But the point is, foamy urine, protein in the urine, always needs to set off a little bit of an alarm, and the doctor needs to do more introspection, more tests, or at least repeat tests need to be done. Next slide. Okay, so stage 3. Again, even at stage 3, and at stage 3, even for the novice, even for the doctor that's just looking at the blood work, you're going to see that there's a big change in the creatinine, the blood test. And when you see that change, it's usually, for doctors, the abnormal labs are usually highlighted. So when you go to your doctor's office, this lab, your blood work now is going to be highlighted. And this is where a lot of people that get routine follow-up will find out they have kidney disease. The good news is, at least in the early stages of stage 3, it's still reversible. It's still reversible. And what needs to occur is you need to be under the care of a doctor that feels competent to be able to treat your problem that's leading to your kidney disease. Okay? So my point is this. You have high blood pressure, let's say, and your blood pressure is not under control, even though you're taking your medicine. You may be on 1 or 2 medications, and your blood pressure is still running high. High means, like over 140 for the top number and over 80 for the bottom number. So if your blood pressure is high, it needs to be under control. The doctor may change up your medicines or may add a new medication. That may drop your blood pressure, get your blood pressure under control. And not only will it drop your blood pressure and get it under control, what the doctor can do is add specific blood pressure medicines that allow your kidney to hold on to protein better. Okay? So when that happens, all of a sudden, your kidney function overall will get better. Okay? But this takes time. It takes an interdiction from a healthcare professional, and it takes careful follow-up. But stage 3 and earlier can be reversed. And that's the take-home message. Next slide. And now we're going to be talking about stage 4. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. All right, so stage 4. Once you get to stage 4, unfortunately, it's unlikely your kidneys can recover. However, you can stay in stage 4 for a long period of time if you're under the care of a a doctor that can focus in on your kidneys. It's usually at this point you need to be under a kidney specialist. You need to be under the care of a kidney specialist. That would be a nephrologist. And if you're not under the care of a kidney specialist, that at this point you need to ask to see a kidney specialist, because what's going on when you get to stage 4 is the doctor's just trying to keep your kidneys going long enough for you to not go on to dialysis. You need to start planning for the future, including possibly having a transplant. But the point is, at this point, stage 4, it's very unlikely that your kidneys are going to improve, but you need to be under the care of a nephrologist. Next slide. Okay, stage 5. Usually, once you get to stage 5 with kidney disease, you need what's called renal replacement therapy. That's going to be dialysis. Dialysis can be either hemodialysis, which means that the needles need to be stuck into your arm and your blood goes through this filter. That can be done in a center or preferably at home. Or you can get peritoneal dialysis. That's a tube in your tummy, and that's usually done every evening while you're asleep. There's a machine in your bedroom. Or you could have a kidney transplant, and the kidney transplant can either be from a live donor, a friend or family member can donate their kidney to you, which is the best option for transplantation, or you could have to receive a transplant from a deceased person. But it's at this stage 5, when you're at the point of no return and you're going to need something in addition to your kidney to keep you alive. Best option is going to be transplant, because you're going to live the longest if you could successfully go through that operation. It's in stage 4 where the plans should have been made, because what you would like to do is spend the shortest period of time possible on dialysis so that you can move on and get a transplant if you're a good surgical candidate, because that's going to be the best thing lifelong. And if you could avoid dialysis completely, that is the best option. Next slide. Well, this presentation was just to go over the 5 stages of kidney disease. And like I said, before we get to questions, I just want to rehash the most important things. Number 1, you are diagnosing yourself with kidney disease if you start to see a lot of bubbles in the toilet when you urinate in the morning. That is already a red flag, and you need to start thinking, I could have protein in my urine. I need to get it checked out. First 3 stages of kidney disease can be reversible. You need to get diagnosed. If you're at stage 4, you need to absolutely be under the care of a kidney specialist called a nephrologist. And if you need to be transplanted, the earlier, the better. But I'm here for questions. Thank you, Dr. Curry.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Melanson. This is a fabulous presentation of the 5 stages of kidney disease. And what I want our audience to know is that you can put your questions in. Those of you that are watching on Facebook Live, please put your questions in the chat and we will try to get to them while we have Dr. Melanson on. But before we get to questions that I have about that outstanding presentation, I want to introduce Dr. Clive Callender, the director of the Minority Tissue and Transplant Education Program, a wonderful scholar and a mentor to Dr. Keith Melanson. He is the esteemed one, and I am so grateful that he has joined us. Dr. Callender, would you have any words that you might want to share with us?
Well, I think this is a very important topic, and I'm anxious to hear some of the questions that come up that we can answer. because it's so important to get a diagnosis of a diagnosis of kidney disease early at the point where you can reverse it. And I think it happens far too infrequently. And I'm hopeful that this presentation will allow more of our minority people of color, to get kidney screened, find out if you have protein in the urine, and then get a reversible kidney disease treated.
Well, I'd just like to follow up with where you sort of left off, and that is dealing with protein in the urine. I know Dr. Melanson said that we could do a urinalysis and check for protein in the urine or proteinuria, but I want to know, can you have kidney damage and not have protein in your urine?
It's a very good question, Dr. Curry, and the answer is yes. There are, we call it in medicine, we call it nephrotic versus nephritic, or some
Okay.
other issue with the kidney. So there are lots of things that could lead to kidney problems, and you never have protein in your urine. In those situations, other things could happen. You could have bloody urine. So you could have blood in your urine. You could present with pain, back pain. So presenting with back pain could be a problem that's going on with the kidney, or it's just a routine blood work that we talked about earlier. But the quick and dirty answer to your question is, can you have kidney disease without protein in the urine? Absolutely. It's just that the most common reasons that we see in our patient population for having kidney disease, remember I told you, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, those three things. For those three problems, those patients will usually present with a lot of protein in their urine.
Okay. Can you have congenital disease that can lead to end-stage renal disease?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are numerous congenital problems that people will inherit. I mean, these are genetic issues. One of the most common is a polycystic kidney disease. This is you're born with those genes. You're programmed. Your body is programmed to have all of these cysts on your kidneys. And for a certain percentage of patients that have these cysts, they're going to go on to end-stage kidney disease. That's an example. Another common one is FSGS. FSGS can be inherited. FSGS is like it's a big diagnosis. There are lots of different ways to get there, but one of the ways to get there is congenitally. You are inheriting this genetic problem, and you can see it in families where everyone at a certain age starts to have kidney problems. And so yes, there are numerous congenital diseases that can lead to that are kidney problems. You can also have congenital diseases that lead to kidney problems. In other words, like lupus. Lupus, you don't necessarily have to have kidney failure if you have lupus, but lupus patients are at a much higher risk of having kidney disease. So there are congenital problems that are congenital kidney problems, and then there are congenital problems that can lead to kidney disease because of the problems themselves.
Okay, just for our viewers, I want to make sure that we have clear understanding of what FSGS is.
Yes. Oh, good point. Yes. Sometimes we speak in these acronyms and we forget that not everyone's a doctor. So focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. And all that means is that little engine that I talked about at the beginning, our kidneys have all these little engines in them that really do the work of the kidney. Those little engines, for some inexplicable reason, shut down and turn into a scar. It's kind of like an abandoned house. The house used to be full of life and people lived there, and then it was abandoned. That's what happens in FSGS. Those little houses are abandoned and they scar over. And like I said, there's a couple of ways to get there, but one of the ways is you inherit this problem. We see this particular type of disease, we see it more in minority patients. Same thing with lupus, which is why I mentioned those things. Lupus and FSGS, these are problems that we see more in the Black and brown communities.
Well, I just want to jump to some of the questions that are really popping up from some folk that really enjoyed your presentation. And these are coming in through Facebook. And one says, Dr. Melanson, you suggested that home-based dialysis is preferable than going to a center. Why is that? What is required from the family in order to do the home-based dialysis?
It's a very, very good question. It's a very, very good point. So, and I guess it could be a little controversial, even though I don't think it's as controversial as it used to be. So here's the deal. I, as well as Dr. Calendar, we're both transplant surgeons. So we see patients for a transplant from a surgical point of view. We open up their bodies and we can tell a lot about the health of someone when you cut into their vessels and such. And I can tell you from doing lots of transplants on different types of patients that patients that come in for me to operate on them are in much better shape if they've been on home dialysis rather than in-center dialysis. Now, it makes sense if you think about it, because when you're on home dialysis, and this is true if you're on peritoneal or home hemodialysis, you tend to get more dialysis, right? So when you go in center, there's a schedule. It's like going to the public pool versus having a pool in your backyard, like you, Dr.
Right.
So if you have a pool in your backyard, you can go swimming every night, every day during the summer. You can just jump in whenever you want. With home dialysis, you're not just set in for 3 days a week, right? Which is usually the way it goes when you go in center, because they've got to get a lot of people into that center. When you're at home, instead of going for 3 days, you can do 4 days or 5 days. So now you're doing a lot more dialysis, and the dialysis is a lot more like your kidney. Your kidney, it's like your kidney function, or closer, a closer facsimile to the way your kidney functions, rather than having to go to the center only 3 days a week. Peritoneal dialysis is pretty much every day. Every night you go to bed and you hook up to this machine. So you're getting it every day. So it's really the frequency. And the other thing that makes it better, particularly on the hemodialysis side, is that because you have the luxury of being at home, the movement of the blood does not have to be as fast. And that's safe, right? So it's safer because the blood is moving slower. So you have less ups and downs with your blood pressure. You're less likely to have a heart attack or a stroke, and it's easier on the kidney function that remains. So one of the reasons, like I said, one of the reasons why these patients are healthier, they continue to make urine usually. And because they don't have the fluctuations in their blood pressure, the blood pressure is more normal, and that makes their vessels better over time. So that's why I believe home dialysis is better than in center. But we could let Dr. Calendar give, Dr. Calendar's been around for a long time, so it'd be interesting to give his input.
He's still a young man. But
Yeah,
Dr. Calendar, what do you say about this home-based dialysis?
I couldn't agree with you more. Because I have had the same experience as you've had, that the best dialysis is home peritoneal dialysis. And the patients are healthier, the hemoglobins are higher, and they're in better shape. And as you said, this is more akin to how your kidney really functions. So this is the best form of dialysis. And now the government has recognized that and is paying more for peritoneal dialysis than it is for other dialysis.
One quick thing, and I want to go to another, some questions from our audience who is just really want to hear from these great doctors. We talk about home dialysis versus going to a dialysis center. Can you talk about a little bit of the difference in the cost? In the areas where a number of folk need it, is there a significant cost difference between home dialysis and center-based dialysis?
Well, yes. So, but Dr. Calendar kind of alluded to that a little bit, because there used to be a huge difference in the way the doctors were paid based on
I
the
see.
type of dialysis. Now, the government did the right thing just in the last few years to 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 make those payments to the doctors equal. In other words, doctors used to get paid a lot more for you to have dialysis in the center versus having it at home. Now, if you are a dialysis corporation, you still make more money by having the people come to the center. It costs us as taxpayers because this stuff is usually covered by Medicare, sometimes private insurance, but it costs us a lot of money to keep people on dialysis. In general, it's about $100,000 a year, right?
Hmm.
$100,000 a year to keep people on dialysis. It's exceedingly expensive. I was on a talk the other day with the National Kidney Foundation, and if this pandemic of kidney disease continues at the rate that it's going up, and the amount of money we pay for dialysis continues, we will bankrupt Medicare just based on the treatment of kidney disease in by 2030. So we need to do better in how we treat kidney disease. Like, dialysis is wonderful. Before the 1960s, people with kidney disease just died, right? So
Yeah.
the fact that we have dialysis is great. It keeps people alive. But the point is, we need to do a better job of treating people before they get to dialysis. And then we need to give them the best form of dialysis. To answer your question, it is cheaper. It's about a third cheaper to get home dialysis than it is to go inpatient. I mean, in center. So it is definitely, it's cheaper. The problem that we see with Black and brown patients in particular is that there's certain things you need to have in the home in order to have home dialysis. You got to have the right sort of access to water, so that the water can be purified in a certain way. It used to be that you had to have your own home. They used to say you had to have your own home. You don't. You can rent an apartment and still be on home dialysis, but it may need to be retrofitted in some sort of way. And so we need to make sure that patients have access to these sorts of things so that they can have dialysis at home. Otherwise, you could have, like Dr. Calendar used to always talk about, the green screen, right? Where you have the wealthier patients getting home dialysis and the poor patients being in the unit, in the dialysis unit. And you don't want that, but we see that sometimes because of this issue with the home. And the other issue is just, health literacy. Dr. Calendar has spent his entire life, one of the biggest things that MOTEP did was it increased the literacy of the people to explain to them that, hey, if you donate your kidney after death, it helps people from your own community. Once
That's
Black
right.
people and brown people understood that, the rates of donation went up. So what we need to do, and I think, to be honest, I think the kidney doctors are doing a better job with that, particularly since they're getting more money to do it now. But they're explaining to the patients that it's better for them to get dialysis at home. And there are different organizations like the National Kidney Foundation and others that are pushing local statutes in these cities and states to say it's only right that poorer people or renters have better access to home dialysis.
And that's really where I was going, because we're going to have to contend with this. There's a moral ethical question, and as a pastor, we have to raise those particular issues of the healthcare costs becoming prohibitively expensive, and whether it be at home or even in the center. We need to really look at that. And I'm so glad we have the knowledge that you're giving us, the information, so that we'll be better able to identify which of the stages we're in. I want to jump to one more question that is coming from. We have a lot of questions, so we want to try to get through as many as possible. And this next question deals with, can kidney disease and kidney failure be hereditary? Are they really hereditary? Can you speak to that? Dr. Calendar, Dr. Melanson, please, what do you say about that?
There's plenty of reason to recognize that there are kidney diseases that are inherited, yes. Just as there are many families that have more kidney disease than anybody else. More families that have more high blood pressure, they have more diabetes, they have more obesity. So similarly, yes, there are families that have hereditably kidney disease. And that's why history is important to find out whether your mother, father, brother, sister have had history of kidney disease.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
There's
I totally agree with Dr. Callender said, and I said, but what sometimes people get confused with is um, you could have a lot of kidney disease in your family, and you don't necessarily have inheritable kidney disease. In other words,
Right.
everybody is eating from the same table. Everyone's overweight. Everyone's eating too much salt. Everyone has high blood pressure. Everyone has diabetes. And then you want to say we inherited kidney disease. No, 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 no. No, no.
No,
You
we
inherited
just
some
all
kidney,
ate bad
but it
anyway.
wasn't kidney
We
disease.
ate poorly.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So this is a very I hope the person is still on, but this is this next question is something that I think is very important. It says, I have only one kidney. I lost my other kidney due to cancer 18 years ago. Now I'm under a doctor's care because of my blood pressure. Do you have any special diet that I should be on, because of the doctor did not tell me that also I'm suffering from gout severely? Maybe that has something to do with my kidney problem. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, these patients, you can have gout and not have kidney problems, but gout does go hand in hand with kidney problems. So I
You
would
might
be
want to say that again.
okay. So you can have gout and it has nothing to do with your kidney, and you also can have gout and it does. They go hand in hand with people that have kidney disease. Okay, and it has to do with the way stuff is being filtered through your body. Now, the bigger issue is what's going in, right? Um, Dr. Callender has made his career on this whole concept of love yourself, take care of yourself, right? So if gout, which used to be called rich man's disease, right? And the reason
Mm,
it's called that is because the sort of things that you take in a lot of that can lead to gout are like red meats and cheeses, fine foods. The more of that kind of stuff you eat, the uric acid builds up, and when it builds up to a certain point, it's like building up to overflowing. That's when you're gonna exhibit symptoms of gout. Now, if you have one kidney or if your kidney function is decreased, then and the kidney's important in filtering all that stuff, then you can overflow more easily. So yes, they can go hand in hand. What I would say to the person is, if you're followed by a doctor, I would presume that his although he has one kidney, that the kidney function must be pretty good. And should he be following a special diet? Well, what I would say is, everyone should be doing things in moderation, right? So you would say leaner meats, not too many calories, definitely not too much salt. Salt is our enemy because in this country, salt is in everything. It's a preservative. If you're eating foods, right off the shelf at the supermarket, you're probably getting too much sodium. So one of the things that you could do that's going to help your blood pressure and your kidney function is to decrease the amount of sodium. And how do you do that? Well, you cook more on your own. So eating at home more usually decreases sodium because you're putting it in yourself. So unless you have a problem, putting too much salt on your food, then you're going to have more control. If you eat at restaurants, they use a lot of salt. If you just take things off the shelf, prepackaged goods, it's a lot of salt, a lot of preservatives. These are things you want to try to get out of your diet. But gout, the most deadly thing in gout is red meat, right? So you want to not go for the big steak a couple of times. That's one of the things you want to.
one of the things I want to comment, you commented on the salt being in everything, and I find that definitely to be true. But I also wonder, about sugar.
Same thing.
Sugar is in everything.
Same thing.
Sugar is in ketchup.
Right.
Sugar, folks add sugar, even a whole lot of it to grits and other rice and other sorts of things. Sugar is literally in everything. How damaging is that?
It's hugely
Briefly.
damaging. And you remember a few years ago, we in this country we were on this kick to get rid of fats.
Yes,
And you know what they did? Every time they got rid of fat out of something, they put sugar in it.
that's right.
Because our brains crave these things. It's high. Your brain, that's how we were created. Through evolution, we all the animals and we're animals. We crave high calorie stuff, right? So if you are absolutely correct that the food industry has put way too much salt, way too much sugar in everything. And what we really need to learn, and then you don't want. It's even worse to start picking up diet stuff, because that just messes up your metabolism. Because
Yes.
we're programmed to want sweet stuff, but if you drink something sweet or eat something sweet and you don't get that calorie burst that you're supposed to get, that just messes up the way your body metabolizes stuff. So that's
Sure.
why you may have seen these studies where people that drink diet sodas actually gain more weight. It's because their metabolism is all messed up. The simple solution, again, I got to give credit to Dr. Callender. The simple solution is to start exercising, drink lots of water, sleep regularly, and eat in moderation, right? And be cognizant. That's why education is so important. If you're cognizant now, Dr. Callender is Afro-Caribbean. I'm from Louisiana. You spent time in Texas. I mean,
No, I'm from Texas.
Yeah, okay, all right. So you're from Texas. So we all like tasty food, right?
Mhm.
I bet all of us have figured out recipes that are healthier than the recipes we grew up eating, right?
Yes,
You
sir.
can still get the same taste satisfaction, but you can do it in a healthier way. But you got to know to do it.
Let me just do this. Go ahead, Dr. Callender.
I would add that having a plant-based diet or emphasizing fruit and vegetables, in addition to what you talked about in terms of exercise and meditation as well, are a healthier lifestyle. Love yourself, take care of yourself, and eat less red meat. And I think that's the key.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, salt and sugar are the poisons that we love, but it's killing us.
Well, Dr. Callender, thank you so much for saying that. I do want to just comment briefly on what you just said. Plant-based diets are essential. Are we also talking about portion control when we contend with all of this? Because that would seem to lead to obesity.
Your point is well taken. And our nutritionists who talk to us emphasize portions and emphasize that the portions of vegetables and fruit should be larger than the portions of the other foods.
Yes, yes.
That's
That's what we were
I
asking
just
about.
wanted to say, because Dr. Callender is so correct. But one of the things, like, if think about it, when you go to a restaurant, one of the first things they do is they bring like bread and they put it in front of you, right? So you're hungry, and now they put bread and butter, and you start eating the bread and butter. But really, what should happen, and I tell this to my patients, and it's getting to the point that Dr. Callender just made. What you really should do is just sit there and drink
Drink a glass.
the water. And, the more water you drink, it takes up space in your body. The way liquids work in your stomach, it causes it to tense up. So if you drink a lot of liquid, particularly water, you're going to eat less. Okay. And then no matter what you order for your meal, you order a salad, because again, if you eat a salad, and I'm talking about a real salad, there's some salads you can eat that's more calories than eating. I'm talking about a real salad, no green leafy stuff. So you order a salad and you eat a salad, again, that's less space in your stomach for whatever else. And then you're going to find that you're actually satiated by eating a portion control meal. And like Dr. Callender said, on your plate, your whatever your meat is, your vegetable should be the same portion. And as is true with your fruit. So if you have the same size fruit serving as vegetable serving as meat serving, now you're moving in the right direction.
Well, that's amazing because oftentimes in our American society, we treat vegetables and fruit as sort of a garnish to the meat that we have on the plate.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so I really want this. But one thing I want to do is jump back to the questions that the audience has. But before we do, I want everyone that is listening to this program to tell people about the 5 stages of kidney disease and what Dr. Melanson is sharing. You can find a risk assessment tool that you can take at home at minuteforyourkidneys.org. Minuteforyourkidneys.org. We want to encourage you to take that risk assessment at home and know what your status is, because we want to see you live a fruitful and long and prosperous life. I do want to jump in and ask this particular question. It says that for African American patients, do you feel that EGFR specific for African Americans is accurate? Why is there a separate reading for Black folk or African Americans?
I'm gonna let Dr. Calendar answer that one. That's too complicated.
Well,
Oh, thank you, audience,
well,
for your great.
I think, unfortunately, that we're obsessed with race in the United States, and it's a social construct.
Yes.
We're all the same race. We're all Homo sapiens. We have different ethnicities, but we're all Homo sapiens. And therefore, I believe that it is. I do not agree with the GFR specifically for African Americans. There are those, however, who feel strongly. Some nephrologists feel strongly that it's appropriate. I think it's inappropriate, and I think that one size fits all. That yes, we do have different appetites, and we have different muscles and muscle strengths for men and women. And they allege that we as African American males are more muscular, and therefore GFR should be different. Frankly, I don't agree. I believe that one GFR should be for all. And that's my strong feeling on this matter. And I've had a lot of talks about the importance of recognizing that the race is a social construct, not a real issue. We're all Homo sapiens.
And I will totally agree with Dr. Calendar because you have to go back in history to understand where this stuff even came from. And when I was in medical school, there was in our anatomy lab there were these beautiful specimens of human bodies that had been dissected from this African tribe. And this happened over and over throughout history, where these beautiful African specimens had been taken, and these early anatomists realized that the musculature of these certain African tribes was so much more, larger than the typical European person. And that's where this concept was when they started to come up with things like GFR. So it was rooted in racism, because let me tell you, no one signed the consent for their bodies to be displayed in that way. And although there are differences, there can be differences, that in this day and age, like Dr. Calendar said, race is a social construct. And although there are African Americans like myself that have more muscles, that's not the point. The point is that everyone should be normalized, and we should just go with one GFR. Now, as we move into individualized medicine, you could do specific scans of people's body and determine, well, for this particular person, this is their muscle makeup, and then you go with the GFR based on that. But really, this, like I said, this is part of our past, and it was a very racist past that came up with these calculations.
Dr. Melanson, Dr. Calendar, we have a number of questions that are follow-ups, and I want to do this in terms of perhaps almost a lightning sort of round and get some quick answers so that we can get as much in as possible. We may have to come back to this subject because it seems folk are really excited about the information you're presenting. One that I like to back up on and have just a brief statement about is, can you tell us how much potassium we should have daily, and what are the best foods for potassium intake?
Potassium is good for the management of high blood pressure, and so there are foods that are rich in potassium. But people who have kidney disease, potassium is bad for them. So you have to be careful when we talk about potassium. Bananas, orange juice, those things are good for people who have normal kidneys. But if your kidneys are not normal, and you then could be poisoned by the amount of potassium. So therefore, people who have kidney disease are requested to avoid bananas and orange juice because potassium may cause problems. Potassium is one of the most poisonous products you can have. If you want to kill somebody, you give them too much potassium. And so
So,
there should be a limit on the amount. Exactly how much? That's a good question.
Dr. Callender, you mentioned plant-based diets earlier. Can you just speak to why they're so unique? What makes plant-based food so unique?
Well, what makes them so good is that they have uh, the natural minerals and antioxidants that are healthy. They also are not as processed as the meats are. And it's not that the meat is so bad; it's the processing that makes meat so bad because processing is what leads to cancers and high cholesterol and cardiovascular diseases, which is the number one killer in the country. And so, if you have a diet that's based on plants, then you don't get those elements that cause so much cancer and cardiovascular disease. And that's why plant-based diet is plant-based diet and fruit-based diets are very good for you in terms of reducing cardiovascular disease and in terms of your health
Yeah,
and
Dr.
reducing
Malone.
cancer.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Dr. Malone, can you say a word about the impact of sleep on your health, especially the relationship between sleep deprivation and high sugar levels?
Yeah, no, and I can tell you this, give
Because
you a
you
lot
don't
of
sleep.
yeah, exactly. I give you a lot of personal information because as a transplant surgeon, I've gone without sleep on many occasions, and I can tell you that I do not perform my best when I'm sleep deprived. The amount of sleep, it can vary a little bit, but basically it's about 7 hours a night. So somewhere between 6 and 8 hours a night, you need that amount of sleep for your body to be functioning at its best. And yes, your metabolism is poorly affected by losing sleep. So you don't metabolize things as well, and your sleep wake cycle is deranged, and the way you eat is deranged, right? Because what happens, these diurnal cycles of when insulin is up and when your appetite is at its high, low, and all that kind of stuff, all that's thrown off. So people that don't sleep correctly, they wind up eating a lot at night. What should happen is you want to have a gap between that last meal of the day and when you actually go to sleep, right? So that's why you want to eat that last meal about 5 6 p.m. You want to go to bed about 9 p.m. You want to have a couple of hours there, and then same thing. When you get up in the morning, you want to get up, be up for a little while, then have that first meal of the day. That whole cycle is thrown off when you don't have the normal sleep wake cycle. But your body needs on a regular basis about 7 hours a night of sleep,
Okay.
and lots of water. The more water you drink, it's also going to make your sleep better, and the less alcohol. Alcohol also throws off that cycle. One of the things I know this is I'm getting long winded, but one of
Yeah,
the things
we have about 3 minutes left.
okay,
So
okay. Well, one of the things I was going to say by being sleep deprived, I noticed throughout my career that somehow 3 hours was good for me, whereas 2 or 4 hours wasn't as good. And the reason for that is a REM cycle is about 3 hours. So what you really want is you want to be able to go through two REM cycles a night, and that takes 6 hours. And that's why over 6 hours of sleep is so much better than not getting 6 hours of sleep.
Well, this is awesome, gentlemen, and we have so many questions that are still just flowing in, but we're running out of time. So this is what we want to do. We want to make sure that we have opportunity to get these questions answered, and as much as they are being captured in Facebook and in the comment sections, we want to be able to answer your questions. And so Dr. Melanson, Dr. Callender can give answers, and we'll work with the team to try to get you what you need so that you can be healthy. I want you to remember this: the National Kidney Foundation has developed a risk assessment tool that can take you to see if you are at risk of kidney disease. It's called minuteforyourkidneys.org. Minuteforyourkidneys.org. Take it, check it out, make sure that you know what your status is. What stage of kidney disease are you in? We are so excited about this opportunity of just doing great and amazing things. And so thank you so very much. There's a link that will be part of the National Kidney Foundation that will be shown at the end of this broadcast. And I want you to pay very close attention to it because it is something that really matters to save your life. I'm so glad we had these kidney talks with the Ron and Joy Paul Kidney Center with none other than Dr. Joseph Keith Melanson and the esteemed one, Dr. Clive Callender. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And in 2 weeks, get ready because we're coming back again. And the show is going to be based on something that you have of interest. So we're coming to you trying to address critical issues in the community. Thank you so very much. And let's have a great and healthy weekend.